Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel, and today I'll be discussing the interference of Colonel James Burton in the Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle program. Burton, as you probably would have guessed from his title, was a colonel. He served in the Air Force when he became aware of a level of corruption within the Pentagon and procurement sectors. He was later tasked by Congress to investigate various weapon systems and vehicles not being completed within their budgets or timeframes. And in this, he decided to take an in-depth investigation into the Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle program and prove that the shortcomings of the Bradley were ignored, so that the vehicle could be continued, giving those in charge of the program more funding and promotions. However, little of this is true. Obviously, the Bradley did have flaws, okay? Like, every vehicle has flaws when it's being developed. But the government at the time was aware of these. In fact, they actually developed a newer Bradley variant that was in development at the time to solve these problems. Also, the other thing is that many of the greatest flaws of the Bradley would be solved through even later versions that were developed in direct response to these mentioned issues. Next of all, Burton created a program to work alongside his investigation called the Joint Live Fire Test Program, which was an assured destruction test that would lead to Burton's claims that the military is trying to cover up the failings of the Bradley. This is simply not true. The so-called cover-up was simply the military trying to glean new information about the Bradley and survivability. You see, Burton was adamant that the military needed to carry out the test in his way. His way being that the test was nothing more than blowing up a Bradley and seeing what kind of munitions it was resilient against, and what types would penetrate, despite the fact that this information was already available to the American government. Because yes, as dumb as the government can be, they realize that if you shoot a fucking infantry fighting vehicle with aluminium armor, with a, 480mm penetrating anti-tank round, the tank's probably going to explode. Who would have guessed? But anyway, the government was not interested, however, in the exploding vehicle, but rather how to increase survivability and support the people that would be inside the asset. This can be seen through an instance where the fuel tanks were filled with water and the ammunition with sand. These kinds of actions would allow for an understanding of the damage that would be caused by a penetrating shot, which could be used to improve the protection. Another notable complaint was that Burton had was that the mannequins inside of the vehicles had their clothes soaked in water so that they would not catch on fire. This is despite the simple fact that the government was attempting to see what kinds of fumes aluminium would cause if the vehicle was ignited in combat, and smoke from the burning uniforms would reduce the reliability of the test. This stupidity continued, with Burton demanding a redesign of the Bradley, which had its fuel tanks on the outside of the vehicle, a change that not only made the asset larger, but more vulnerable to artillery and gunfire from the sides. The final straw ultimately came when the government, in an attempt to protect the crew from the vehicle burning up, placed a water tank inside of the Bradley that would rupture when being shot, thus releasing the fluid and extinguishing the blaze and saving the crew. Burton claimed this was cheating. The government, when receiving his report, realised his goal was not to make the vehicles more survivable, but to prove the military is wrong, by pointing out every issue with the vehicle, whether they existed or not, and by pitting it up against munitions that the vehicle was never even designed to survive against. However, this part is where my interest has been focused. Why did he do it? From my understanding, there are only two real explanations that could be made. Either Burton was a complete incompetent idiot who knew nothing about war, or that he had malicious intent to harm the Bradley project. And in my opinion, it was the second option. This comes from the fact that, unlike the satirical film, The Pentagon Wars, Burton had already had experience in military procurement, and was by no means unaware of the corruption. Next of all, he was a colonel, a high-ranking officer who was personally tasked by Congress to investigate corruption in the military. This means he wasn't just any old conscript or trooper that just completed basic and was slapped into a high-level military role. He was experienced. He knew what he was doing. So why? Why would he sabotage a military project? And here's where I'd like to introduce you all to Burton's reason: the Blitz fighter. This was a radarless gunplane that he designed to replace the A-10 Warthog. Whilst a lot of people get confused and they think it came before the A-10 and the reformers try and play on that card, it was actually designed to replace the A-10. It was equipped with a GAU 8 30mm cannon and could carry no other weapons. The government demanded this vehicle would at least need to carry a radar system, which Burton claimed would not work. In his opinion, radars were useless junk that couldn't tell the difference between a tank and a truck full of refugees and civilians, despite the uncomfortable fact that they could. The military rejected his program, a low-cost, low-tech aircraft that were using human wave tactics on battlefields, and showed that they were interested in high-tech, expensive weapon systems that would carry radar systems and long-range missiles. And this is where the Bradley comes in. Just like the weapons that would be replacing the A-10, and unlike his Blitzfighter project, the Bradley was high-tech, high-cost, and had been designed to fulfill a new role in the American military. A role that was unproven at the time, and that had yet to be fully tested in combat. And this is where the thing comes in. He was just given a free pass by Congress to do whatever the fuck he wanted. He was able to put in all these options, make all these decisions, and call these shots on this program. He was allowed to poke things with sticks that he probably shouldn't have been poking. And this is where we start to realize that, yeah, I think there's a bit of an abuse of power here. However, despite this fact that the Bradley was untested, when it was allowed to carry out its intended role, it excelled, killing tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and APCs, or armoured personnel carriers, with regularity. It protected the crew and saved many lives of servicemen and women, and is currently in service across the world. I would like to finish up by saying this. If Burton had got his way, the American military would not be able to compare to newer weapon systems being fielded by Russia and its allies. American servicemen and women would have been slaughtered in M113 redesigns with no sufficient armour or protection to ensure survivability. There is a reason why Australia refused to deploy M113s in Afghanistan. I'm just saying. He would have rather seen people die instead of his assets not being used by the American military, and ultimately, I guess Burton was right. There was corruption in the American military. It's just that he was the problem, not the solution. That's it for now. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe. It really supports this channel. I want to get to 100 subscribers in the next couple of years. Like, that's still my big goal. But yeah, I just want to try and get there, and I really appreciate any of the support you guys give me. I thank you all so very much for watching the channel, if indeed you still are, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you very much. Goodbye.